Blackhawks fans, welcome into the Four Feathers podcast. It's Johnny Nani, Ron Luce, and Tony Marchese joining me this fine evening. Crack 'em, gentlemen. How we doing?
Doing fantastic, boys. Ron, what do you got over there?
I got a little spill is what I got right now. I have a little hop butcher. It is called Presto Changeo. It is a mosaic and Simcoe hopped double Indian pale ale. So that's
Exotic
what I'm drinking
GM Ron tonight.
Yeah. I got some beers. My uncle, shout out to my Uncle Paul. He always hooks it up and always brings me 4-packs of very exotic beers, and I have so many of them in my fridge. I need to drink a couple of them tonight. So, little Monday night shenanigans, boys, and we're starting off with some Four Feathers podcast. I'm excited. Good to see you guys today.
Yeah, guys, it's good to be back. I know, I always the end of the season is always tough. It's like bittersweet. But, after a rebuilding campaign like this, I think everyone was about ready for it to be over. But at the same time, you're going to miss hockey over the summer. That's kind of where I stand.
I already miss it. I don't know about you guys, but I've gone those couple of days without just actually getting to watch the Hawks play, and I'm surprised that it crept in this early. Maybe it's a byproduct, Johnny, of some very shitty White Sox baseball. Maybe Ron doesn't feel this way, but at least with the Hawks, you didn't really worry about if they won or lost. You just got to enjoy them play this year. So it was not as stressful.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you see the difference in perspectives there because, got Ron. It's over. It's been 84 years, as his name indicates there right below him. So, I'm not. I don't think I'm there yet because the Stanley Cup Playoffs just started tonight, and we're going to do a little bit more banter back and forth about that later on. So I've got that. I've been flipping between those games, and that's kind of curing my hockey itch right now.
Yeah,
so that's kind of where I'm at. So. Yeah, Ron.
I was just gonna say, completely in agreement with you, Johnny.
Yeah.
I think just the problem with this year's Hawks season was it wasn't that it's a rebuilding year and like Tony said, you can just enjoy watching the team, because I actually did enjoy watching Blackhawks hockey this year, even though we knew they were going to lose a lot of games and that's just what it was going to be. I think it was the end of an era that took the years off my life that prompts my description and my name tag of it's over. It's been 84 years. Because that's why the season felt like 84 years, was just everything surrounding 88 and 19 finally being gone, and kind of that turn of the page metaphorically here in the franchise's timeline. I think that's the reason I'm kind of like, oh, all right, it's over. And I already miss watching the Hawks, because I'll be honest with you guys, watching the Stanley Cup playoffs for me without the Hawks in it doesn't have the same flair, but it's still going to be good. And I'm excited. I'll be honest with you, these first two games I'm a little underwhelmed by here that we're recording during, but some of these West Coast games I'm kind of excited for. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah, that's why we did it here, because I'd go and pen the Islanders Canes as the most boring series. I actually saw on Twitter someone was asking about what was the most boring series, and it's the overrated Canes versus Ilya Sorokin. That's what that is. So I'll get more into that later. This one is, we're going to start off though. It's the Blackhawks season eulogy. We do one of these every year. So Tony appropriately wearing black. It's a little bit too warm for me to throw my black quarter zip on over it. So I'm going to roll with the red like Ron is tonight. But we're going to be discussing looking back.
I was going to say, how are you guys not in sweatshirts? It's like 30 fucking degrees outside. It's hockey weather. I think that makes it feel worse.
Tony, if you're in a house, there's this thing called heat.
Yeah, I haven't turned mine back on.
I was in a hoodie. I was in a hoodie and sweatpants all day. So like my body just got finally warm enough where I felt like, I'm trying to tease my body into thinking it's warmer than it actually is.
Ron has to show off the awesome, I love the jersey, the hockey but basketball jersey, because those are legit.
It's the comfiest thing in the world.
Yeah, I like those. All right, well, let's get on with it. On tap, Sportsnet presents Four Feathers podcast, 2022-2023 Blackhawks season eulogy. And I got to start this one off by asking you guys what your biggest takeaway from this season was.
Luke Richardson. That's my biggest takeaway. Just night and day difference over what we saw at the end of the Jeremy Carlton era that sort of rode out the last prime years of what felt like the end of the Stanley Cup era. Luke Richardson really proved himself as probably, if not the best head coach in Chicago. Johnny, and you and I have had that conversation numerous times about why. but I can't look at this season and not think about how much impact this guy is going to have over the course of this rebuild. And, from a positive perspective, I'm impressed. I think a lot of people were impressed with him, and he's going to be up there for coach of the year if this team turns it around over at the end of this rebuild here. And I liked what I saw. He had guys ready. There was a great work ethic throughout. Not good hockey team. So tons of positives there. I'll toss over to Ron.
Yeah, I mean, for sake of not echoing the same thing, I will pick something different. But I am in a complete agreement with Tony. I think the Luke Richardson and just what he did behind the bench with probably the least talented team on paper in the entire NHL this season is certainly worth applause. And certainly, I think something that Blackhawks fans can be confident with in terms of going into the future is just who is behind the bench running this team. I mean, it is no longer the Jeremy Colleton who Tony compared to Pedro Grifol today or yesterday. For those in White Sox land, I think, like you guys said, I think we all can be confident what the future looks like. I think the biggest takeaway, unfortunately, though, for me, has to be the end of the era, right? I mean, 19's last home game on Thursday, 88 being traded at the deadline. Really kind of that final nail in the coffin of what was the golden era of Chicago Blackhawks hockey. And Tony, I mean, you and I did the show after the Patrick Kane trade. And that clip has been around for us over on the YouTube. And for those that aren't, subscribe to the YouTube, do so, and then hit the little bell button so when when we go live just like this. But I think for me, that's the biggest takeaway outside of the positives of like Luke Richardson and how hard this team played with a lack of talent was just, okay, it is officially over. And, kind of have to hit it with the don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened, and turn the page and see what this, next era now of Blackhawks hockey looks like with Luke Richardson at the helm.
Right. Good takeaways there. I mean, I think Tony stole everybody's. That's an easy one. Mine was going to be, Luke Richardson is the guy. I think that's a very safe, big takeaway for me. I go and with my memes, Chad Luke Richardson, #culture. I love that. That's what Luke Richardson represented to me. And while just kind of blending some of the things that both of you guys said there, while I agree, Ron, that it was an official close to that chapter of Blackhawks hockey, a new culture has been established. And the biggest proponent of that is Luke Richardson, and getting the effort that he got out of the lack of talent that he had was honestly incredible. I know you still finish as the third worst team in the league, but obviously that was by design, right? With the roster construction, it was the pace of the games, the sort of, what's the best word I'm looking for? The determination in those guys' strides when I saw them out on the ice.
Would you say the TWTW, Johnny?
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The fire, passion, grit, TWTW, all of that stuff that was on display at multiple times throughout the year. And I think you found some good culture guys in there. I look at someone like Jared Tenorti. He's able to not only revive his career here, but become a very important piece of what's being built here. And he wants to be here. And Luke Richardson's a big reason behind that. But, something like that, a guy like that can carve out a role here. And be a foundational piece for the future. Not that he's going to be part of the next great Blackhawks team, but what I'm getting at here is establishing that culture and having a defender like that in your lineup, and someone who obviously gets it. He gets what the program is here, and there were a lot of guys that were like that. I mean, he's not a high flying name by any means, but someone like Jujar Kara being able to lay down what the example is for future penalty killers should be. Right, small things like that were probably my add those all up, and that became my biggest takeaway of the season is #culture.
Yeah, incredibly well put, Johnny. I think that rounds it out perfectly too, just because you said like of the lack of talent, but the amount of guys too, just quickly to add, that were wanted to be a part of this thing and play for Luke Richardson, right? We talk about it, how Max Domi is a candidate to come back this offseason because he loves playing for Richardson, dating back to their days together in Montreal. Andreas Athanasiou has already been on record saying that he would like to come back after a 40-point campaign this past season. There's going to be some guys that probably come out of the woodwork between now and the start of next season that, because of Luke Richardson and establishing that #culture, are going to want to be Blackhawks. And that is a incredibly different sign compared to, as Tony noted, the end of the Stanley Cup era with Jeremy Colleton at the helm, where it felt like guys felt the complete opposite way. So completely agree with you, Johnny. Incredible way to tie it all together there with that step forward in terms of culture.
Right. Yeah. I think that kind of underscores what all of us were kind of at there when we're talking about biggest takeaways. All right. Let's talk about the finish to the season, guys, in draft lottery, because that was on a lot of fans' minds all season, and rightfully so, because you have this generational talent at the top of the next draft. How it all shook out for the Blackhawks at the end. They do not have the best odds to land Connor Bedard. They do not have the second best odds. They have the third best, with Anaheim sitting at 1, Columbus at 2. Let me read these off. You can go and find these on tapsportsnet.com. Click on our Blackhawks section. You can go and find these here too. Number 1 pick, Blackhawks have 11.5% chance. Same for the number 2 pick, 11.5% chance. Number 3, 7.4%. Number 4, 40.7% chance. And number 5, 28.5%. They are guaranteed to pick in the top 5 by virtue of their third to last finish there. So, thoughts on this? How did the tank do? I hate to do this, but I think I'm going to preface it. My thought is that one of our guys, Pat Comiskey, says the Blackhawks stink at stinking. That's where I said.
It does feel that way, doesn't it, Johnny? They do stink at stinking. But again, tying it back, Luke Richardson's a huge part of that, right? If you had just some slapdick name as a head coach here and he wasn't trying to instill a culture into this team for the future, I think they would have been better at
look at the 2 teams that finished above them and what the fates of their head coaches were.
Both gone. Exactly. So I think that's a huge reason why the Blackhawks are where they finished in the standings. But I'll tell you what, if I've learned anything, gentlemen, it's that just because you finish last does not mean you get the first pick. How many years did the Buffalo Sabres finish with the worst record in the league every time, and they still got screwed out of number 1? They got screwed out of number 1 in the Ekblad year. They got screwed out number 1 in a couple of those years when the Oilers jumped up. It doesn't mean shit if you finish at the bottom. Just because the Ducks are there and Zegras needs a buddy, and does not mean the ping pong balls are going to fall that way. It's going to be interesting to see, but they're close enough to the bottom where they still got a chance. And as long as you're telling me there's a chance, that's all I care about, because they were still a fun team to watch because of all the things that we already hit on.
Ron basically said exactly what I was going to here, Johnny, in terms of the Luke Richardson thing. I mean, this guy came in here and said he was going to make it hard for Kyle Davidson, and that's exactly what he did. The Hawks acquired enough draft capital, too, along the way to sort of supplement themselves throughout this draft, which GM Ron, who's scouted this thing, has told me is pretty damn deep. So I've always sort of thought that they were going to wind up at 2 or 3. The chances here when you're reading off number 4 at 40.7%, Johnny, sort of scares me just because you obviously want to land someone in the top 2 of this draft. I mean, those are some big names that are right there. So it puts a little bit of a damper on that, but you do have a 20% chance, a little bit over 20% chance of winding up with 1 or 2 here when you add these up together. And, for all intents and purposes, could you go back and look at a couple games where Johnny probably got really infuriated that they wound up with a point? Sure. Many others are feeling that way. They played, to that style of culture, and that's what sort of, caused this, as Ron said. But overall, at least they didn't finish middle of the pack and, put themselves in a really, really bad situation with that.
Right. It certainly could be worse, but I had to open with that because all we can do right now, there is the only thing that was in their control was giving themselves the best odds. We're playing numbers here, and just going strictly by the numbers. I have to block out all the things that we said in our opening block of the show here to analyze this just from a strictly NHL draft lottery odds perspective. And in that vein, the Blackhawks did not give themselves the best chance to land Connor Bedard. So that is where the frustration sets in. Obviously, a layered sort of casserole below that in terms of why that happened. And I think you guys helped explain that very well there, but I still need to go back to it. And just like I said, just giving you the numbers. Once again, find them at ontapsportsnet.com. We'll have coverage leading up to the lottery and all that stuff. But, you talked about those, obviously you wanted to finish in top 1 or 2 when you had said, oh yeah, looks like 4. It's the best there, Tony. My advice to you right now would be to go and read up as much as you can on elite prospects and elsewhere, Sportsnet, other places, about Leo Carlson, because that's what you're looking at right now in terms of what the odds suggest.
Yep. Incredibly.
Ready to go and watch Swedish Hockey League highlights, Tony? Sure, you're
I
totally ramped up for that.
I totally get amped up for that type of stuff, Johnny. I don't know. I've seen Fantilli and Bedard highlights basically all winter.
And those
are the 2 guys that are right there. It's going to be a really rough day if we finish in that 4th spot on lottery day. I don't know how you guys are going to feel. I'm
going to feel like our guy Skokes in the comments here. I don't think I'll be able to focus on anything else on lottery day is what he says. And I think we're all right in that boat, guys.
They're doing this first thing in the morning, right, boys? We're going to wake up. They're going to let the ping pong balls loose.
I think I'll be at Casa de Marchesi with my first beer cracked around 3:30 in the afternoon on that day because I'll need it going into that lottery.
Are we doing another, tank center, draft center?
Four Feathers Lottery Center?
A ping pong ball appreciation party?
Yes.
We got to warm them up. We got to, brown nose them a little bit, right?
Yeah.
We need to recreate the video and have Ron with the towel, like with the bowling ball, but with just like a whole horde of ping pong balls, just shining them up.
100%. That needs to happen.
Are we good? I worry about these ping pong balls' future, though, if things go wrong. Like some ping pong balls may be damaged if we wind up 4 or 5.
Yeah.
100%. Right. They'll be chucked at a wall or used on the golf course as a as a practice ball.
Yeah, it seemed like a prime target for your fireworks, Tony.
Yeah, strap them to a firework, just light it off. And fuck this ping pong ball.
Right on a bottle rocket. Yeah, that sounds about right. So, once again, you can go and find draft lottery odds on tapsportsnet.com. We got a nice breakdown there that tells you what their odds for each pick are there. And we'll also obviously cover some prospects leading up to it on, what it may be looking like. And that draft lottery will come on May 8th. So stay tuned for our ping pong ball appreciation posts leading up to that. All right. Let's move on to the next thing in here. And we talked about closing a chapter, right, this season that we feel like, a lot of sort of pages had to be turned for this to actually be closed, right? The last one was Jonathan Toews. Obviously, Kyle Davidson announced that the Blackhawks would not be re-signing him. So his final game in a Blackhawks sweater was the final game of the regular season. We all got to be in attendance for, which I'm glad we all had to meet up, take it in together. But guys, takeaways from that whole night.
Jonathan Toews almost won me $1,000. That was my biggest, just in the moment takeaway.
You were that close.
I was this close. So for those that obviously don't know, I didn't publish or post this anywhere. I had a 4-leg parlay going into the game. I made it with Tony in the atrium as we were just hanging out, having those, pregame atrium beers like we said to have at the beginning of the season, Johnny. And I decided to make a parlay. I'm like, here we go. What are we going to do? Let's make it weird. I had a Jonathan Toews anytime goal because, of course, an Anders Bjork anytime goal because I was just feeling it because I like Anders Bjork. He's becoming my Sam Lafferty. Ironically, wears the same number.
And that helps boost those odds too. Yeah.
Sure did. I had a tie after 60 minutes, and I had the Hawks money line, and $10 would have turned into $1,100. And Johnny's breakaway in overtime had my heart pumping through the roof, thinking he was going to give me the greatest gift he possibly could give me on his way out. And then the Flyers come back down and ruin my parlay. So that's all that happened because we had the 3 going into overtime and we were feeling good. But from a takeaway standpoint, boys, that was an emotional night. Like I told myself I was going to do my best not to cry, but at the end with the tribute and his, kind of his celebratory victory lap, and I, was able to. Among everybody brought, friends and things like that. And Tony, you brought your brother, and Johnny, you brought your buddy Alex. My girlfriend was there and she had to console me a little bit. She's like, it's okay. It's okay. Because I think for a lot of people, especially like me, who you know, I really didn't get into hockey until, Kane and Taves' rookie seasons, because that's when they were back on WGN. You could actually watch games. And so for me, all I've ever known in my life as a Blackhawks fan is 19 and 88. And, appropriately, the captain goes down with the ship.
You
But
missed so many great years right before that, Ron.
I know. So many incredible years, when they were voted the worst franchise in sports and all of those. But I mean, it really almost feels like, because it was such a large part of all of our lives, right? It's so weird to now be like, okay, that's over. Like, that's all most people have ever known as Blackhawks fans. Like, those two are directly responsible for turning around the popularity of hockey in Chicago, not just from a fandom perspective, but like kids playing the game. I mean, those two are at the forefront of maybe one of the greatest runs any given city has seen with any given sports team ever. And to think that it's finally the last page has been turned and the book has been closed and it's put back on the shelf now to be revisited at a later date. It's a little surreal, and I don't think it's entirely sunk in yet.
Well, that was a beautiful serenade there, Ron. I feel
That's
like
what you do at eulogies, right?
Yeah, first off, Chevy's going to need a completely new marketing plan in Chicago. I wonder which Blackhawk is going to be driving Chevys next.
Seth Jones.
Seth Jones.
Drive what Chad Luke Richardson drives.
There we go. How long until he's on a Benny's commercial, right?
Give it 6 months.
Hey, he does like his beer. We saw that from like the kind of behind the scenes thing of the home opener. So that's a good one for Benny's.
He's a Kraken guy, just like us. We got a lot of practice with this a couple of times earlier this year, so I felt like I was a little bit more prepared for the Taves one than anything else. I like the fact that the three big names all sort of got honored this year in terms of Marian Hossa. Patrick Kane, I would say, didn't really get honored, but everybody in the stadium, Johnny, when we were there, kind of knew that was coming. And then obviously the Taves one, they made the announcement beforehand. But I would say if we were still hanging on to one of these pieces going into next year, it would sort of feel like you've got that weight hanging on you. It feels, at least right now, as if everything has, moved on. We've had these moments of closure. You can live with it. Had this been more Kane-esque at the trade deadline with Taves, I think that, towards the end of this season, it wouldn't have kept people as hooked into Blackhawks hockey. So I'm very thankful that we got some extra Jonathan Taves, and sort of, as I wrote about earlier, the captain went down with his ship. And I think that that's, really, truly, remarkable when you look at him sort of being the first one in from Kane, Taves, and Hossa, and then watch him sort of all go out, within the same year. Obviously, Hossa not playing this year with the Blackhawks, but getting honored, getting the jersey retired. The next sort of thing you look forward to is, what's the next retirement ceremony going to look like? And, how long is Patty Kane and Johnny Taves going to continue to stick around in the league? We obviously don't know if retirement is next for the captain or if he winds up somewhere else next season. But, it felt like the appropriate time for all of this, as much as it hurts. The organization's at, the bottom of a rebuild right now, and a couple of rough years ahead and everything. I mean, the night itself, I thought, was awesome. It was sort of poetic in the same sense that, Patrick Kane got robbed and Jonathan Taves sort of got robbed there at the end of games that they, could have been the final goal on. But overall, it was just great being there. It was great seeing you guys. It was great seeing the United Center loud for the anthem and loud throughout. And it was just a great night to watch hockey.
You talk about loud there. for me, the biggest takeaway was feeling the roars again. And Jonathan Taves, something that he touched on kind of, Ben Pope wrote an article as they were coming back from that last road trip. And that's when Kyle Davidson had the discussion with Taves. So it was kind of known yet, but they didn't announce it until the day of the final game, right? But everyone kind of had a feeling in the way that Taves was talking and in that interview and stuff. But that's one thing that he talked about was, you can't help but, hear the roar, and that was something that I felt for sure, because man, I was glad I was there to document it, and I got some good videos of it. You can go and check them out on the Four Feathers Pod Twitter account at Four Feathers Pod. But even going off the ice for warmups, because he took that over being the last guy off after Kane was gone, right? So you got a huge ovation then. Obviously, when they came back out on the ice, do their one lap before the introductions. When he was introduced, I thought the roof was going to blow off the place. The anthem was loud, felt like a dynasty era game.
Loudest I've heard that place in 7 years, Johnny.
Right, maybe Hossa night can compare, but I think that there's a little bit more passion in this one, just because game time and stuff like that. And then obviously the videos that were shown on the board, the interview that he did after the game, the whole salute kind of going around to all of the crowd, man. I felt the roar, and it felt good. And it, like Tony said, it was kind of, storybook in terms of putting a close to that era of it. So I felt like I didn't get cheated on my way out, and I'm kind of glad they announced it the way that they did, so everyone knew, and we were able to give it proper send-off. And he obviously felt it. And one thing he said himself, I want to try to get the fans out of their seats a few more times. Well, guess what? You successfully did that, Captain. So we salute you.
Yeah, I think you put it so perfectly too, right? With just the roar, and it finally felt like one of the guys from the core got a proper send-off, right? We were robbed with Hossa in the skin condition. We were robbed with Seabrook in his kind of degenerating body. We were robbed with Keith being traded in that 1 year before his retirement. Kane getting traded, before that, final home game before the deadline. At least with Johnny, they gave the announcement, and we all knew going into it that this was Taves' last game. And I'm glad he got that send-off, because I feel like so many other icons that were a part of those 3 cups didn't get that the way that they probably should have. So it was good to see Johnny also get that at the end of it as well, too.
Right. I go to what Tony said, and I'm wondering, what's the next ceremony going to be like here? I feel like as soon as, Siebes, very possible. We were talking about next ones here, but we don't know for sure, but it's a big question mark then with, like Tony said, how long is Jonathan Taves going to play? Is he just going to hang him up here? Because that was, it's hard work for him to help, even admitted it, to try and even get back for this last stretch here. But obviously, something that he really wanted to do. So we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. But for now, it's a close to a chapter in Blackhawks hockey. So, Captain, we salute you. On to the next topic. We roll on at Four Feathers Podcast. Opening night, Stanley Cup Playoffs, boys. I wanted to just get your thoughts, maybe a few predictions on who we think's going deep. We got any upsets? We got any dark horses? Any bold predictions for the Stanley Cup Playoffs? Obviously, no Blackhawks here, but I'd love to shoot the shit about with you guys for a little bit here.
I got a couple of bold predictions, maybe 3 kind of smaller ones, and forgive me, I'm just pulling up the bracket so I don't get any teams twisted up in terms of who plays what and when. I think the Oilers finally make it to a Western Conference Finals with McDavid at the helm. I think they're going to get good enough team play here to get there. I don't know if they're going to the Cup, but I think they'll get close. I've seen this team a lot as kind of a dark horse for the Cup. My only concern for them is Vitek Vanacek good enough in goal, but I think the New Jersey Devils can make some noise in this playoff run. Obviously, Blackhawks fans probably rooting for Patrick Kane and the Rangers to get past them in the first round. Obviously, if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, that second rounder becomes a first round draft pick. So there's a little bit of draft pick incentive in there to not like the Devils, but certainly a team that I think can generate some buzz. And I want to see what the Kraken do in round one because they have the defending champs in the Colorado Avalanche in the first round. This team took that step forward in year 2 of its existence. A lot of major contribution from a number of players that were there, last year, guys like Schwartz and Eberle and so on. I want to see what they look like in their first kind of go at it. And is that a team that can maybe make a little bit of a run? I still think Colorado is loaded. I think they took a little bit longer than most people expected to get going because of some injuries and they missed a lot of guys. But I mean, they're still the defending champs, and until somebody dethrones them, it'll be theirs. So I'm intrigued to watch that series because I just there's a sneaking suspicion in me that thinks Seattle has a shot because I feel like that Pacific Division this year was just so close all year. And just because the Kraken finished as the wild card team, I don't think is a knock on them at all because they really did have 4 really strong teams in that division this year with, only a handful of points really separating all of them. So excited to see what they do in the first round as well. But that's kind of what I'm keeping an eye on going into the playoffs here, boys.
Ron, I think you stole a lot of this from me. I do like that Colorado Seattle matchup. It's going to be interesting. Although I do think if Colorado comes out there, they're going straight up to the Western Conference Finals. I don't see them having any issues with Dallas or Minnesota. Obviously on the East side, there's a couple of teams that you look out for. Boston's always a wagon. They played some great stretches of hockey this season where they looked damn near unbeatable. But then obviously you got New York and Patrick Kane and touch on the storylines with the Blackhawks draft picked ramifications there as part of that trade. But be interesting to see Patrick Kane back in the playoffs, guys. I mean, is he going to turn it up? Is he going to be vintage Patrick Kane the way he was for that stretch when he was finishing up with the Blackhawks and just take things over? He's got plenty of help there in New York. I'm going with Colorado and New York in the finals.
Oh, there you go. The only reason I'd possibly be rooting for the Rangers is for that draft pick. Call me a, sour puss here, but I don't have any affinity for them.
I don't either, Johnny.
I like Patrick Kane, but outside of us getting a better draft pick, that is quite literally the only reason. If that was not a condition attached to it, I would probably root for the Devils over them, with Patrick Kane in tow.
I would root for the Devils over them as well.
Great.
However, my one thing here, Johnny, and this is something that we talk about as sports fans all the time, they fucking went for it at the deadline. They went for it. They made so many acquisitions.
Yeah.
And you want to see a team sort of get rewarded for doing that, going over the top. Now, most times it falls flat in its face. And you give up way too much capital to get these things. But there were times back when I think about, the Blackhawks in these scenarios, between 2010 and 2016, where you go into these trade deadlines. I don't know if we ever had any year that matched up in sexiness to what the New York Rangers did.
There were some necessary and solid moves, but nothing was ever like, wow.
I mean, let's go acquire stars and throw them on a team. So I don't know. I just feel like that's going to help propel them up to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know you guys talked about the Colorado Seattle series. I look at that one and I do think, you want to see a fight, but I do see Colorado breezing through that one rather easily there. I have the Winnipeg Jets over the Vegas Golden Knights, the fraudulent Vegas Golden Knights, with Jack Eichel's underperformance this year. Mark Stone, 3-month layoff. I know he's a huge Energizer bunny, so that's big for them getting him back. But
I have to get you boys over for one of these games because I know a Golden Knights fan that you need to rub it in with.
Yeah, what the hell is Vegas's goaltending situation outside of relying on a few hot stretches from Brossoit? I will take Connor Hellebuck any day of the week over that. I really like Kyle Connor, Nikolai Ehlers. I feel like they can kind of pump the Vegas Golden Knights a little bit, even though that's a 1-8 matchup. You got to remember, the Winnipeg Jets led the Western Conference for a good portion of this season.
That is true.
Sure, they hit a skid that really dropped them down to where they're at now. However, I still like the elements that are in place there, and there's just too much uncertainty at key spots for Vegas, key guys. keep position in goal, like I talked about there. So that'd be my bold prediction, in that the Winnipeg Jets add in their whiteout there a little bit. I know Vegas is a nice environment for hockey there too. However, when at Winnipeg, those Canadians, they get after it when it comes to playoff time. So I'll go with that. Feel free to, clip back to this, Brian, and, clown me after Vegas advances in 5. But other than that, I look at this. I said it at the beginning of the show. I'm going to watch it because it's playoff hockey, but I think the Carolina and New York Islanders series will be an absolute disappointment. I think it's sad that the NHL let off with this in time slot wise tonight, but I also understand it for their TV scheduling thing, and I'm glad they threw them on ESPN2 instead of the regular one. The New York Islanders had like one shot on goal through like 12 minutes of play tonight. Guys, it's bad. It's bad. It's Ilya Sorokin versus It's Ilya Sorokin trying to stop Sebastian Aho and, Marty Necas and the crew that's left over after Max Pacioretty and Andrei Svechnikov are injured. So I don't like that series at all. I hope it just gets over fairly quick, to be honest with you. Other than that,
will Toronto burn down again this year?
See, that's like the easy thing to do there. It's tough. No one ever wants to say the Leafs are going to do it. And I'm not going to, because go to the goal.
Why would you?
Andrei Vasilevsky in net. He turns it up in playoff time, and he's probably going to have like a 945 plus save percentage.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm predicting. So no, Toronto. Excuse me. Yes, Toronto.
Could you guys see the Florida series happening if we get the Panthers and Lightning?
No.
Bruins. Do you think Bruins roll through?
Steamroll.
I think the Bruins are just...
They got a $10 million man in net who's sitting on the bench. I get it. Yeah. You got to play the hot hand, but Alex Lyon in net down there for Florida. They solved them twice in the regular season. I don't see them solving them over a 7-game series.
Yeah, and the Bruins are a team too that, hell, they set the win mark in NHL history for wins in a season with 64. This is not, you're just normal Bruins are good this year team. The Bruins are stupid good this year because
best
you have
regular season team ever, right?
That's why I think when we get to the Eastern Conference Final, Boston, New York, you've got two cities, great rivalry, more on the baseball side, but still on the hockey side as well. I think that would be probably the most entertaining series that this playoffs can provide you, is those two teams.
Boston in 5, easy.
Do you think Boston
New York
in 5?
has? Yeah, I don't see New York. I don't see them beating the Devils. I'll go ahead and use that as another prediction here. As much as we would like to, as Blackhawks fans, for that draft pick thing, they have too many liabilities. The New York Rangers do. In terms of they have offensive playmakers. Don't get me wrong, but the New Jersey Devils can answer with them on that level. New Jersey Devils will have better defensive play than the New York Rangers do, especially from their forward group. I feel like that's something that's going kind of under the radar. It's great to have Tarasenko and Patrick Kane and all that, but they don't play a dick lick worth of defense. I'm sorry. It's bad.
We said it at Tank Center. He's not there to play defense for you.
Yeah.
He's there to pass the puck and score goals.
And they're a team of streaks too. So sure, they could ride a hot streak, right? But I've seen them get in funks, and it's like Jacob Trouba's thrown his helmet at boards to try and get it out of it. And even the Blackhawks were able to beat him. But granted, that was before they had a Patrick Kane there, but you know what I'm saying. It's not been smooth sailing all throughout the year for the Rangers.
Also, don't forget that the Blackhawks also beat this Bruins team most recently in the regular season.
They've beaten a lot of these playoff teams when you look up and down this
really
and that's what's funny. That's what's funny when we talk about earlier a couple of wins that you'd like to have back. Yeah, when Boston came to, it was at home, wasn't it? Or were we on the road? I thought it was at home. Where do you wind up with a win there? And
Taylor Ratty Shatrack, just fucking crank it, man.
Crazy.
All right,
let's
do. I know Tony, you kind of gave one there, but Ron, you got a cup final prediction, winner prediction here, and then we wrap up this. Get on to your GM Ron preview of the summer.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little off the board. I think the Avs are gonna be in the Western Conference Final, but I think the Oilers are gonna beat them. I think it's the Oilers in the Cup out of the West, and out of the East, somebody's gonna give Boston a run. I really believe that. It might be Tampa in the second round, just because Tampa's Tampa, and this team they're like the Avs kind of coming into this year, right? They might have not had the best regular season of any team, but they know how to win. It's still the same core that was there that's won, as much as they have recently. So I wouldn't mind seeing it. I think it'd be a hell of a matchup. I'm gonna go Lightning and Oilers as the Stanley Cup.
Ooh, I like it. Champion.
I think Connor McDavid gets his first.
There you go. I also have the Oilers power playing their way into the Stanley Cup final. And I will give them credit that Stuart Skinner, just beautiful mustache. So just number one there. And number two, he's actually provided them some stability and cut out the drama that has been in net for Edmonton over the years, which has hindered them. I like the Matthias Ekholm addition there too on their blue line. So I'll go with the Oilers out of the West. Bruins, though, it's easy to just pick the number one top dogs. I see them as a complete team, though. You talk offense, defense, goaltending. You can go Allmark or Swayman, and I'd feel fine about them. Doesn't matter.
Agreed.
Stomach bug ripping through the locker room doesn't matter. They're up 2-1 on Florida right now already. It's that's the way they are, and they're also your Stanley Cup champion, Boston Bruins, over the Oilers in 6. That's where I'll go.
I like it. I like it a lot, Johnny.
All right. On to the next, what's on tap next. Take a look at the summer ahead on this Blackhawks season eulogy show. GM Ron, this is your time to shine. So
this is what I'm here for.
Tell us what's on tap this summer for your Chicago Blackhawks.
Hawks got a lot to do this summer, boys. I think that's the thing a lot of fans don't understand coming into the summer is, it's a rebuild year, but this team still just has to acquire money just to be compliant in the league. Right now, the estimation for the cap floor is going to be about $61.7 million, according to reports out of the NHL front office. The Blackhawks, as of now, per our friends over at Cap Friendly, are only coming into the season with $42.5 million against the cap. They have to spend nearly $20 million just to be cap compliant coming into this season. They're going to do it, and Davidson's made it very clear they're not going to give tons of long-term contracts or acquire bad long-term contracts, anything like that. So it's going to be a lot of, oh, hey, so-and-so team, you're tight against the cap, because cap's only going up about $1 million. I think that's something that people got to realize too coming into this year is because of the escrow and all the weird, kind of things that impact the cap and what sets the cap each year. It's not going to be a big increase. So there's about 13 teams right now, guys, that just in my laying down before bed research that I've done over the last couple nights, that might be trying to move a couple of contracts. And I think if I'm Kyle Davidson, those are the teams I'm calling and saying, hey, we know you're in a bit of a bind. We need your help. You need our help. Let's help each other and see what we can do here, because there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of this team. And even in, beyond next season, guys, I think this was going to make this even crazier, because I think some of these maybe 2-year contracts that might be considered bad can be stomached by the Hawks, because then going into the season after next, they only have $16.8 million of cap commitment. I mean, this team has no long-term contracts that aren't named Seth Jones really on their books right now. So it's going to be a lot of, hey, we'll take your bad contract for this pick or this prospect. I think they are going to sign a couple guys. I don't think be surprised if Athanasiou returns. I don't think be surprised if Max Domi comes back on a 2 to 3 year kind of contract. There's going to be a lot of that. They're going to still have to add something. It's not going to be a lot of long-term deals by any stretch of imagination. I could see a world where maybe they do one long-term deal. It might sound funny, but how funny would it be if Alex DeBrincat decides not to return to Ottawa and comes knocking and is like, what do you guys think?
I'm going to stop you right there and ask you, do you honestly think this is a possibility? Because that was hotly contested on Twitter.com just yesterday.
The only reason,
a couple of people.
The only reason I don't think it's an honest, realist possibility is just from the sheer standpoint that he's a restricted free agent. If he was a full UFA, sure, because then he has free reign and free choice and he can go wherever the hell he wants. Because of that restricted tag, even if he decides not to re-sign with the Senators, they own his rights. So they're going to be able to move his rights for likely draft compensation of some kind. And maybe the Hawks do pony up. Maybe that, the Rangers lose in the first round and that pick is the second rounder this year. Hawks have 4 second-round picks in this coming draft if that ends up being the case. Maybe you move one of those second rounders back to Ottawa and say, yeah, we'll take Alex back. And, Kyle Davidson and Kevin Korchinski are having a glass of wine in the summertime to celebrate the heist that they pulled off against the Senators if that ends up happening. Realistically, do I think it happens? No. Would it be really, really fucking cool if it did? Absolutely. And it would just be bedlam in terms of what Blackhawks fans would think, because realistically, he comes back, there's one of your pieces that you're building around for the future. He'd probably be the one long-term commitment that this team would decide to make. And then it's a bunch of Max Domis and Andreas Athanasious and bad contracts they take on for additional resources, and you keep building through the draft and keep building through development.
You can go and check out, the implications of what the Blackhawks have to do in terms of spending, Ron. In addition to that excellent breakdown you just provided there, go check it out on tapsportsnet.com. Click on the Blackhawks tab, and you'll see it there. Just to, kind of preview of what's to come here this summer in their what they need to do to be able to, spend and get to that cap floor. In terms of those contracts, Ron, you gave us a little bit of a bold prediction when we were all together hitting the links on Friday. So I think you need to share it with the listeners, though, because I was intrigued. It made me raise my eyebrows.
I did, and I'm gonna put together an article series, and I'm really gonna try to take it the extra step and make it a video series as well.
I was so intrigued that I hit a golf ball into somebody's backyard after Ron said this.
That was the reason. That was the 100% the reason. But I'm gonna document it. It's gonna be more than just me hearsay on the podcast. Because like I said, there's about almost half the league that could be in cap trouble going into next season that the Hawks could potentially help. Obviously, not every team is going to make a deal with the Hawks, but there's probably going to be, I would say, 2 to 3 of them that absolutely do from that standpoint. And my bit of a bold prediction hot take was a 36-year-old TJ Oshie was going to be a Chicago Blackhawk for the next 2 years because Washington's tight against the cap. They have almost an entire blue line they need to rebuild after getting rid of Orlov and really just having Carlson, TVR, and I believe it's Jensen are the only 3 that are kind of their big guns.
Yeah, I don't remember. They still got Eric Gustafson too, so he's one of the big guns. How can you forget him?
Yeah, he's your forward legend. Blackhawks legend.
2-time Blackhawks legend.
Yeah, right. Oh my goodness. But yeah, so I think there's a world where, because he's only on a 2-year deal, he's getting older. He carries I think it's almost a $5.6 million cap hit going into next season. I think he's a candidate that, the Blackhawks bring in for 2 years. He's a good veteran to have in the locker room for guys like Lucas Reichel and other youngsters that are inevitably going to make their way to the NHL over the next 2 seasons. I think it's a move that makes a lot of sense. Capitals have money to shore up some of their pieces and try and go, on another run with guys like Ovechkin and Backstrom and so forth in the fold still. And the Hawks get a warm body that will sell some tickets and still be an entertaining player to watch, I think, even in his last 2 years of that contract, and probably get a couple of resources to go along with it. So that was that was my bold prediction on Friday with you guys in attendance. It's TJ Oshie in a Blackhawks uniform.
A little older. I kind of look at him like what a Tyler Johnson brings currently. In terms of obviously a little bit different play style, but in terms of leadership style, where they're at in their careers, what they've done, that's how I view a TJ Oshie. So that's why I raised my eyebrows at it. And I'm glad you shared that with the listeners there, Ron. So as we look ahead to the rest of the offseason, like we mentioned, draft lottery on May 8th. NHL draft is June 28th and 29th in Trashville. And then NHL free agent frenzy for the first time since 2019 returns July 1st. GM Ron, that is your Christmas morning.
That is my Christmas morning. I love July 1st, boys, because it's perfect in the States too, because that's usually the start of our long weekend for the 4th. So for me, it's just 3 days of being glued to Twitter and writing articles that hopefully you guys will all read over at ontapsports.com. Yes, that is my Christmas morning. I cannot wait for July 1st. We got to get through the draft first, because that's going to be exciting in itself. But you better believe I'm waking up on July 1st at 6 a.m. ready to rumble, because that's GM Ron's time to shine.
That's way too early.
I'm gonna give myself a reason to get up that early. I'm gonna go shoot 18 holes before deals start being made at about 9 a.m. Central Time, and then I'm gonna be back to be able to write. So I'm
already booked your tea time.
maybe I did.
I think I'm gonna steal Tony's phone and turn on tweet notifications with sound for Frank Sarah Spaghetti, Elliot Friedman,
Do it.
all of them. So then he rudely gets awakened from his slumber as soon as the free agent period starts opening. And it's
What time does this open at? What time does it open at?
Yeah, the official time's not posted yet.
Official time's not posted. I just hope it's like after 11 a.m. Central
It
time.
won't be.
It'll probably be closer to 9 or 10 a.m. Central Time.
Great.
That's what I would imagine.
Great. I'm gonna wake up to like a million text messages. We
100%.
might even just do this from my house. I'll let you guys into the basement, and I'll bubble on down here about 11:30. You guys can just give me the updates.
Deal. I'm all for it.
Guys, it's been quite the year. Quite the year of rebuilding Blackhawks hockey, but we appreciate all the listeners sticking through it with us. It was blast getting out, seeing some of you out at the UC. You guys, hanging out with you guys, doing Tank Center. When I look back on the season for Four Feathers podcast, the first inaugural Tank Center, and I know it's not going to be the same exact setup next year in terms of where, not taking straight to the bottom of the standings. That's not going to be the same goal next year, but I do think that can become a tradition, a trade deadline day special of sorts for Four Feathers Pod. I really like that. It was a blast covering this team with you, regardless of the results, what they may have been. Blackhawks hockey is a shared passion of ours, so appreciate you guys, and I appreciate all the listeners tuning in. So final thoughts, and let's wrap it up.
GM Ron is cooking. Just be on the lookout for all the crazy things I dive into, because that's what I do. I live for the off seasons. It's the weirdest thing ever, but that's what I do. And I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a fun summer, boys, and inevitably we'll be together probably quite a few times, doing some Four Feathers content, and probably hitting the links in the meantime as well, just like hockey players do in their summertime. We're going to do the same. So looking forward to it with you guys. And
we're already off to a good start on that.
We are off to a great start on that. So it was a crazy year. It was a tough year, I think, as a Hawks fan. It was it felt like it was 84 years, like we said, but it's over and onto the next chapter in this Blackhawks franchise history.
Ron, Johnny, it was a hell of a year. I think that I enjoyed Blackhawks hockey more this year than the previous two. I've got to say, just team has a direction. We have ourselves a hell of a head coach, as I opened this show up with. I know Ron is starting his season, but for Johnny and I, it's sort of the not as exciting as actually getting to watch the product on the ice. I know Ron loves his charts and his depth charts and salary cap crunches, and he's got his calculator out there on his desk, just ready and waiting to go. But, for me, it's going to be sort of just sitting back and watching some baseball and waiting for hockey to come back here. But I'm excited to talk more hockey with you guys through the summer, keep the show going, and just hope for some better returns next year. And as this team starts to, try and work its way out of a rebuild. One thing I will say, it is a little nerve-wracking sitting here at this juncture, given some of the things that we talked about. One, lottery odds, not exactly in your favor to grab one of the top two impact players, considerably where they could have been. And, I'm sitting through a rebuild that did not quite work the way many expected it to on one of the other teams that I hold near and dear to my heart. So, looking back on this, I know it's the end of the golden era of Blackhawks hockey. I think the final thing I have to say is, man, I just want the fucking roar back, and I can't wait till it's back, and I hope it's back. But, I will always appreciate that roar, the way the crowd just, man, it just gives you goosebumps when you sit there and think about what's been done in that building in the last decade. And I hope that, we can experience that together again, because nothing is promised when you do this. So, boys, it was a great season with all of us on the mic talking Blackhawks hockey and out there at the UC, and can't wait to do it again next year.
That'll conclude the Four Feathers podcast 2022-2023 Blackhawks season eulogy. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you. As always, make sure you're subscribed on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube. Hit the like button on those videos. Hit the little bell so the notifications know when we go live. Jump in the YouTube comments. We want to hear your takes all throughout the summer. Obviously, plenty to discuss. So once again, on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube. Check out ontapsportsnet.com, and you can find us on social media at Four Feathers Pod and at On Tap Sportsnet. Plenty of great off-season content coming your way. I already said my parting words. My last final word is be kind to your ping pong balls between now and May 8th. Until next time, boys, let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks, baby.